Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Donnie Glover, publisher of BlackUSA.News. Today we have with us Kamal R. Hubbard of KamalRHubbard.com. He is an author, he is a businessman, and he's here to talk with us today about DeFi. Good morning, Kamal. How are you?
Doing great. Good morning, Donnie. Thanks for having me on the show.
Now, I just want to clarify, we're going to talk about cryptocurrency today, right?
Correct. Blockchain, cryptocurrency, decentralized finance, also known as DeFi, which has had a pretty big explosion starting last year.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. For all of us rookies,
sure,
we've been seeing the whole Bitcoin revolution. I did some research last night. It goes back to what, 2009. It seemed like a Japanese gentleman who was otherwise unnamed. It was a little vague in the description. He founded it. And since then, one of my colleagues, Marcel Humphrey, told me to ask you that if I put, oh my God, I messed it all up. But he was saying if you invested in cryptocurrency back then when it was dirt cheap, you could be a multimillionaire today.
Right, precisely. Yeah, let's kind of start at the beginning, and I could kind of tell a little bit about my story and all this. I first came across Bitcoin in 2011, and at the time I was working at the Rock Center for Corporate Governance, which is a joint collaboration between Stanford Law School and Stanford's Graduate School of Business. I was conducting research into federal securities litigation as well as global corruption. Went on to manage 2 projects over there on covering that subject matter. I did clearly a lot of research into those areas and kept coming across this thing called Bitcoin. In the beginning, I'm like, wow, it's interesting, but I'm at work. I don't really have time to really dive deep into it. And about 2013, it really piqued my interest, and I spent 2 years doing independent research of my own because, I did research into stock fraud and securities fraud every day. So I was very skeptical, and coming from a compliance background, you're like, well, what is the compliance around all this? And what is Bitcoin? Is it a security? Is it a currency? Is it a commodity? And so through my 2 years of research, I kept finding out that the underlying technology behind Bitcoin is something called blockchain technology. And the technology itself, regardless of what you think about Bitcoin, is a very sound technology. It's also known as distributed ledger technology. So thinking of that there, the important thing is it's a ledger, right? So how are ledgers used? They're essentially like a database, right? Accountants use ledgers for debits and credits. I think a more approachable way of looking at ledgers is, a library system, right? Checking books in and out. There's a record of who checks out a book, when it was checked out, and when it's due. Another very approachable example I like to use is a hotel, right? A hotel has a system of who's checking in, when they're checking in, they're getting their credit card data, when they're checking out, right? So it's a database of transactions. The other thing is it's a highly secure database of transactions because it uses cryptography, right? So highly securitized data to secure this transactional data once again. So,
what's cryptography?
Yeah. Cryptography is it's a way of making information secret. So, if there are or keeping information between 2 parties, and they basically have a code or a cipher that will allow one party to decrypt those messages and decipher those messages from one party to another, so that an outside third party who doesn't know essentially the secret code will not be able to, once again, have access to that information. How this works in the actual process of Bitcoin. Sorry. So,
wow.
You want me to stop and back up on that part?
Well, let's just get to it. It cuts out the government.
Yes. This is where the decentralization part comes in. And this is the interesting thing, because when I started my research in federal securities litigation, once again, when I was working as a researcher and an analyst, I came in right at the subprime mortgage crisis, the credit crisis, and that's when Bitcoin. What was that?
Yeah, that was just after 08.
Right after 08. And then, like you said, Bitcoin came out in 09. And so it was a response to banks who had acted irresponsibly, right? So, like you said, this gentleman named Satoshi Nakamoto, which is most likely a pseudonym for someone, came up with this technology after seeing this and said, hey, we need to take a trusted third party out of this. We need to create a trustless monetary system, right? We trust banks, right? We trust banks to save our money, to keep our money, to keep account of our money. But it was the banks who came up with all of these subprime mortgages, and then started coming up with all the new fandangled ways of collateralizing and taking actually collateral out of some of these systems. And that's what caused the subprime mortgage crisis and credit crisis to occur. Is, you basically have loans upon loans that have been chopped up and packaged and repackaged, and it's not a responsible way of banking. So
this is the little guy's way of clapping back.
Yes, I think very much so. We're taking that so-called trusted third party out of the equation altogether. So what does this allow us to do? It allows us to transact, you and me, in a fashion that is a cross-border, that is faster and cheaper, right? Because
you know what? I got to get to it. And didn't Muammar Gaddafi try to create a currency for Africa? And that could have been one of the reasons he was killed.
Yeah, there's definitely speculation around that he wanted to create a monetary system that was backed by the resources of the African nations. And once again,
I say that because, now bear with me.
Oh yeah.
You have a book out, if I'm not mistaken. Hold tight. We got you in here. Because I think it's a segue. Here we go. DeFi for the diaspora. Presumably the African diaspora.
Certainly.
And so if Gaddafi were alive, he will probably be buying Bitcoin. Am I concluding this correctly?
There's a strong possibility. What I talk about in my book, everyone, or well, I'm not going to say everyone, a lot of people are buying Bitcoin right now, and they see this same promise in a trustless peer-to-peer system, right? Where you and I can transact with one another without a central bank or some sort of trusted authority and we could do it anywhere in the world. People see the promise in that. They see the promise in all these other currencies that are out there. I wrote this book because of, a few things that happened last year. COVID-19, all the shutdowns, forced people to stay inside. And we had to have this reliance on digital currency, money becoming more digital, I guess is a better way to say it, in e-commerce, right? Look at Amazon, how Amazon has blown up because everyone was at home. They needed stuff delivered to them. So if we're able to do this kind of on either a local, national, international scale, that's one way of saying, hey, we can rely on ourselves. Also, with the passing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, when people were out hitting the streets, I saw this happening and said, hey, you know what? Not only do we need to raise our voices against any sort of police or vigilante violence, we also need to raise our voice and take some power back when it comes to our finances. And this is a great way of doing it.
So let me ask you, Kamal, have the preachers started coming to you
yet? No, not yet. I mean, I've gone to churches and talked about Bitcoin. And, a few years ago, I did this and I got kind of a little bit of the typical pushback, right? And saying, hey, this is the devil's money. And, they
brought the devil into
it. Well, let me back up. Some people got it and they understood it, and that's why they brought me to the church. And then there's other people who said, hey, you know what? We're afraid of it, or we have reservations, which is fine.
This is what Marcel said to me last night. Marcel Humphrey, he's a local investor, real estate investor. He said that people my age, 55 and older, this is our way to financial liberation. That's exactly what he told me. He said, people my age, more than any other group, and I'm not sure where he was going with it, but he was saying, he said this is owed to us. And what I got from that is I owe myself to learn about Bitcoin. That's right. What I got from our conversation last night.
And yet another reason why I wrote this book, right? Because Bitcoin is great, but it's not a complete solution for us. So I say that to say, you can buy Bitcoin today. It'll go up, let's just say 5 years from now. Individually, as an individual, you may profit financially. I'll say may. This is not financial advice. It's do your own research, right? But you may be better off financially. But what about us as a collective? Bitcoin, we as Black people don't have an appreciable stake in the Bitcoin network. I don't know anyone who is a Bitcoin core developer who's Black who's saying, hey, this is how we can use Bitcoin to help the Black community as a whole, or the global Black family. We also don't have an appreciable stake in the mining of Bitcoin. A lot of that takes place in China.
I'm slow. What is mining?
So mining goes back to the whole process of the cryptography. So there is a cryptographic algorithm that takes place in every Bitcoin transaction that requires a certain amount of computing power to decipher that algorithm. And the first group of computers to do that gets a reward in Bitcoin. That process is called Bitcoin mining. So once again, if you have a computer that has the right amount of computing power to solve these algorithms that help broadcast the transactions throughout the network, you get a reward in Bitcoin. So what this does is it helps propagate the network. This algorithm, or what's also called consensus, is a proof of work algorithm. And yeah, I'm sorry, that might be a little bit too technical, but basically the people who are participating in the maintenance of the Bitcoin network, there's not a lot of Black people doing that. So we can buy and hold Bitcoin all we want.
So is Dorothy, I'm going to send you a link. Our show. Let me just give you a link, Dorothy, if you want to get on here, because you're starting to distract me. There you go, Dorothy. You want to come on in and chime in? But let's deal with the first question. So you did say Blacks are not involved. Does that mean it's Europeans in charge, or could it be Asians?
Well, once again, it's decentralized. So yes, I think that was something that I came across too, is there is an element of white supremacy that appears in Bitcoin. Now, back in 2000, I want to say 18 or so, 2017, 2018, when a lot of white supremacists and white extremists were raising money on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and PayPal, they got kicked off of those platforms because essentially those businesses
got exposed.
It was brought to their attention that, hey, you're assisting
with KKK.
Right, you're assisting in the financing of these white supremacist operations. So you need to deplatform them. So what happened is they turned to Bitcoin. And so let's just say I'm buying Bitcoin, right, at whatever price it is, and I'm buying it from a white supremacist so they can go plot and, do. Interestingly enough, January 6th, the January 6th insurrection was partially financed by Bitcoin. So that's an example, right, of the presence of white supremacy. In my book, I name names and operations and organizations. So there's clear links there. Alt-right leader Richard Spencer is quoted and known for saying
I don't
Bitcoin
like the term white supremacy because nobody's supreme over me. I say perceived white supremacy actually is real retarded, because that's like the child telling the parent what to do. Last I checked, the Black man was the first one on the planet. So let's just start there. It's perceived. And I don't get this so-called supremacy thing when the very people talking about supremacy are trying to darken their skin, fatten their lips, talk black, walk black, and everything else. So I don't buy that term white supremacy. At best, it's perceived or confused. I'm sorry, you got me started early in the morning.
No. I think at the end of the day, you're right. No one's supreme to anyone. But once again, these people
if they
have
can stop the 357 from going through their head, that would be supreme. But if they drop like everybody else, stop playing. Go sit down somewhere.
Right, and you're right. It is this perception that this group is better than everyone else, and they want
It's retarded.
So I just really use that term to kind of group that thinking, together, right? But you're right. I'm not a fan of the term either, but I think it's the best way to kind of identify that group of folks.
All right, come on, Dorothy. You gotta find yourself a spot now. What are you doing?
I had to get my daughter to help my 14-year-old to help me get on this thing. I'm on my phone.
All right, come on with it, Dorothy.
I'm right here.
Hey, Dorothy, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
All right.
Hubbard, okay. everybody's talking about this Bitcoin thing, and the young people is on it, right? The people, I'm 56.
You look great for 56, sweetie.
He's right.
I'll be 56 this year. You look great for 56.
Oh wow, thank you. Yeah, I'll be 57 in August. But I got some friends that's they're taking some of their retirement money and transferring it over to the Bitcoins and stuff. A friend of mine that was in he was going into federal prison on a drug indictment. When he was going in, he had to turn himself in. The guy who started that Bitcoin thing was getting ready to come out. So they bypassed each other and they stayed in the cell together for a while. Right. And I think he made some mistakes, some errors. There wasn't no regulations or something. The way he had started this whole platform of Bitcoin and stuff, right? And he's back into it again when he came out. The government wants to get their hands all on this, like you know how it is with Facebook, with regulations and stuff, and it's hard for them to get their hands wrapped because this is, you know, when we talk about the U.S. government, we're talking about the Federal Reserve and their private industry and how this might disrupt that what they try to do with their currency under capitalism and stuff, right? But my only concern about Bitcoin is this a hustle? Right? Is this another game like the whole Donnie, like with the cannabis thing here in Maryland? Right? Nobody knew about this until the Black Caucus got on it, right? And said, wait a minute now, what about Black folks? Can they get involved in this? You understand what I'm saying? It's like when any of these major industries stuff. Right, we always the last one on the bottom of the totem pole to find out about it, and by the time we do get involved in it, right, these people at the top of the pyramid is always on it, and they already in control. We're coming in late. I know this has something to do with a lot of gold, and so I saw Donnie said something about Gaddafi, and I think Gaddafi, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. Right, I think that Gaddafi had did enough networking all around the continent of Africa, where they was going to change the whole concept of currency as it relates to the European common market, right? And he was going to turn it over to the whole gold thing, which was the disrupted. You know, the United States ain't going to have that, nor is Israel, right? And so all that whole network of the European common market collaborated in the assassination of Gaddafi, in my opinion, right? Because he was getting ready to turn the whole currency thing over to gold. And that's where we're dealing with a currency now under capitalism that doesn't have any gold backing it up.
Right.
It's just
So let them respond.
Sorry to cut you off. I go into the history of money in my book and why we need money, why we use money, all the way up to where we are and going back to Bretton Woods and how we changed from the gold standard and our money being backed by real assets to where we are now with obviously quantitative easing and how money is being printed and created. And I agree with you. The Federal Reserve let me back up. Our current Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, has some very negative views about Bitcoin. And why is that? It's my personal opinion is just like you said, they want to have their version of Bitcoin and they want you to use it. They want you to use their Bitcoin. So this goes back to what you're saying. Is this a hustle? So are they trying to hustle you into using their Bitcoin and not the other Bitcoin? What I'm saying ultimately in my book is not just, hey, let's get Bitcoin. Let's create our own currency, have a reasoning behind why we have this currency, and let's use it to create an equitable and sustainable economy, because our participation in the current financial system has a history of discrimination. So if we're able to create bring life and believe in a currency that we back ourselves and begin to transact with one another in various different industries, that's the economic system that we deserve. Do we not?
Yeah, we deserve it. We deserve something different, but that's almost like the in the political arena when people talk about the Republican Party and the Democrats, right? Will there ever be a third party, right? And this is going against the grain, so to speak. You understand? The current policies and laws and financial system. This country loves capitalism. But you're talking about a group of folks that have started something here, which is millennials. Anything that millennials touch, people is always skeptical of because it's younger people, with new ideas, new innovation ideas. And I don't doubt that it can't be successful, right? But the question is, in this system, can this system collapse as the same as like we see on the stock market, right? Where it goes up, it goes down. Can a bubble be created in here that everybody loses out, and then it comes back? Well, and what you see in the current system, it's always the small. There's a safeguard, which has always been the small businessman under capitalism that saves the economy. Right, under Bitcoin, right? Who saves that economy if it blows up?
Well, that's a great question. And what you're seeing now is a lot of hedge funds, a lot of venture capital firms, private equity are getting into Bitcoin. Okay. One of my past roles is working in large over-the-counter trades, where I'm dealing with these family offices, private equity, and some of these larger people who hold capital. None of them said, oh, hey, you know what? We're going to do this trade for the benefit of Black people, right? So now that we're seeing a lot of those folks onboarding into Bitcoin, there's no telling what the true motive is. I mean, obviously, there's a financial motive. They want to profit from it. But everyone, I'm saying that because the traditional financial system is now into Bitcoin as well. So there's no telling what their motives are. Is their motive to manipulate it for their own financial gain? Right. Is it to once again bring it down because it is too powerful and it poses a threat to the current financial traditional system?
Sure.
Regardless of all that, what I'm saying is we have an opportunity now before they operate on those motives and shut the door on us. We have an opportunity now to take this technology, understand this technology, and we can either choose to be successful or to fail in it. And we can do it by ourselves. I feel like, hey, when people say, well, why does Bitcoin have value? By and large, it's because people believe it has value. Why does the US dollar have value? It's not backed up by gold anymore. So
I wanted you to get to that. Is Bitcoin backed up by gold?
No, it's once again, it goes back to the perception of value. And obviously there is a very solid infrastructure that's behind it. Like there are, once again, the people who are mining this cryptocurrency, and that takes hours, that takes energy, that's
writing the algorithms.
Right, and you need the actual computers to kind of keep the network active. So yes, there's a lot of assets that are behind it that are keeping it going, keeping it on essentially, but
so it's creating jobs.
Yeah, it is creating jobs.
Are those jobs being created here?
Those jobs are being created here. Are you familiar
as well in the United States as well as around the world? Mostly the United States, mostly Japan.
Well, Yeah, mostly a lot of this is taking place in Europe and in Asia. There are a lot of African countries that are using Bitcoin and using cryptocurrency as well. So that's a great thing. It is a global phenomenon. The world is using Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. But another thing I talk about in my book is there is a real racial wealth gap, but then there is also a technology gap. If we just talk about here in the United States, there is a huge discrepancy between access to broadband internet. You know, a lot of Black homes don't have the same access to broadband internet that the typical white family has.
And you're not talking about access to Instagram. You're talking about via the computer, not the smartphone, the computer, right?
Right. In the home, like having home Wi-Fi or Ethernet connection that has a reliable high-speed connection. Yeah, I'm not talking about cellular.
So Black people, we're struggling here in the United States. I would imagine Africa has similar challenges when it comes to computer, internet access.
Not just, well, Africa does have a very strong cellular infrastructure, right? So they're able to access what was that?
What about Asia and Europe? I'm trying to see who's strong and who's weak.
Right. Well, yeah, obviously Asia and Europe have better technical, have a better technical foundation, you know, whether it's the infrastructure
they control a lot of the media, social media, particularly in communist China.
That's something that I talk about too in my book. You know, we're moving away from Web 2.0, right? Where what we have is social media and we're moving into a spatial web. So what's going to happen in the near future is rather than interacting with the internet on a phone or a laptop, it's going to be all around us, right? We're going to be using wearables. We're going to have augmented and virtual reality. So
hold up, what's a wearable?
A wearable is a technological device that you wear on your body. Like, an example is, I don't know if you can see it.
The mark of the beast?
Well, yeah, it could be that. Like my Fitbit, right? Or an Apple iWatch, right? An Apple iWatch is a wearable. AirPods are wearables.
They probably come with, what you call that, like backpacks, like you see in the movies, because some movies is introducing that, where you have, you know how like you're like a war, like in a war, you see a war movie and the soldier got a backpack on with the radio, the old World War II. They probably come up with some stuff like that, you know, for real.
I see them going directly into the human body. I see them putting something in your eye, something in your neck, a chip in your neck. Do you, Kamal?
Well, yeah. Elon Musk, who was on Saturday Night Live last weekend, he has a company that wants to implant, chips in people's brains to help them, live better lives. So that's something worth looking into. So yeah, I mean, it's not too far off.
Already, because Europe is always in the front line when it comes to medicine and tech and how they operate. I think York for about probably 30 years now been operating in what the Christians call, right, the mark of the beast, so to speak, where they've been operating and testing chips in people. And they've been doing it for like at least about 30, 35 years now.
Dorothy, are you getting a chip?
No, I'm not. I am a chip. That's how I look at it.
Well,
the chip already.
I think the other conversation that I pose once again in my book is we're all consumers of this technology, whether it is an Apple iWatch, whether it's a smartphone, whether it's a laptop, whether it's social media. Once again, we need to do the work now so that we're creators in this new technological frontier, this new spatial web. We need to be the ones creating the financial tools that are going to help us be able to bring ourselves up from this racial wealth gap. We need to be the ones that are innovating in this space, like we always have, really. But we need to be the innovators and not just consumers, but be creators in this new technology.
Okay,
You know, go ahead, Don.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you go back to the world of Kemet, back in the Egyptian culture back in the past, when we look at the pyramids and how those pyramids was built and those sphinx and all of that kind of stuff, you got to understand that it had to be some form of high technology back in that ancient time for them to do all of that, right? And I think we're going back to that time gradually, right? And I agree with you as it relates to getting on the frontier and in the front of educating ourselves in this whole IT area and this whole artificial intelligence, because this is where the future is going. Now, a lot of people, maybe from my generation and the older generations than me, right, they already afraid of it, because when you talk technology, it's like they lost in the sauce, and it's like it's of the devil and all this kind of stuff, right? No, this is the new world.
Well, yeah.
And we need to be and we need to start learning all these different terminologies and languages of technology, because this is where it's going to be. Now, I have a daughter that's 14. This girl is awesome. I'm getting ready to put her in this program, this IT program, so she can learn even more and expand that. We got children that's playing video games in the African American community, but they still on a very minute level because they should be creating these games. This is what
Dorothy, I want you to look at besttrust.org for education. Okay, besttrust.org.
Okay.
So, private school money. So Kamal, we've touched a lot of things, and this is the first of many times that we will be bringing you on the show. I think Dorothy ought to host you. I think she ought to be the host of a new show. I think we need a new show on Bitcoin.
Donnie, you might want to get Jason Rodriguez, who's hooked up with Mr. McNutt, who was working with the eye in the sky plane thing, because that brother, his mind is brilliant. We got a lot of brilliant African Americans. It's unfortunate that the media always focuses on the negative that's going on, in the construct of our community and culture and stuff, right? But there are a lot of young people out here that is moving in this area of Bitcoins that we're talking about the algorithms, putting together, want to go into entrepreneurship and starting their own companies and getting in on this, right? And like I say, it's more or less the millennials. It's the millennials. And people.
So let me get this question. Let me get this question in. Kamal, Marcel Humphrey mentioned to me last night two rappers, as Dorothy is alluding to the millennials. Marcel mentioned 50 Cent in this whole blockchain conversation, and another friend of mine mentioned Nas and their investment, big dollars to my understanding, in this whole cryptocurrency. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my understanding with 50 Cent is he got Bitcoin in a business deal very early on. I want to say it may have been 2016 or 2017. He did a deal. Just
the album strictly in cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I forget the actual terms, but that's how he was brought into Bitcoin and crypto. Nas was an early investor in the exchange Coinbase. Now, I have some major reservations with Coinbase. A lot of people made a lot of money on Coinbase, and that's great. Nas being one of them once again. But Coinbase is your typical Silicon Valley company that, they have low hiring numbers for their Black workers. They don't pay their Black workers the same amount as other employees there. And that's allegedly based on a New York Times article that came out last year. They did a study on their employment practices, and that's where I'm getting that information from. So I'm not stating that as my own facts, but this is coming from news reports that there are disparities in their employment and hiring and compensation when it comes to their Black workers. So, let's kind of keep that in mind with things too.
Kamal, do you foresee a Black social media coming out? Because a lot of us are tired of being in Facebook jail. And if we doing all of this developing, can we get a Black social media so I ain't got to be in Facebook prison all the damn time?
Well,
they won't let me out.
I think there's been a lot of attempts to create Black social media platforms, and this is the problem, right? I think it's the thinking and mentality that, okay, well, ours isn't going to be as good, right? But once again, where things are shifting is having decentralized social media, right? So there is no essential major party that is allowing to censor you, right? So if the network, everyone and all the participants are the ones who are maintaining that social media platform, no one person can say, oh, hey, I'm going to hush Donnie because of what he said about, X topic, right? No one person can do.
Black people beautiful. I don't know why they cause such feelings.
Yeah, I mean, no one should have that unilateral decision-making power to say, hey, we're going to censor someone for their views.
There's ain't the ACLU, ain't they in on it? Don't they have a lawsuit against Facebook right now? And there's a couple of other organizations that's going up against Facebook as in terms of their practices, as far as their hiring practices, who's in any kind of executive positions at Facebook. A lot of these Silicon Valley companies and stuff, right? Right now on Netflix, Facebook is awesome, man. But this Mark Zuckerberg, he's something. Facebook on Netflix, they got a documentary now of some of the people who no longer work at Facebook. Have you seen that?
No, I'm not familiar with the lawsuit that you mentioned, but I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I am aware of many employment discrimination suits, not just against Facebook. And I don't have any, thing against, well, I do have something against the companies. They're not treating their workers fairly. They're not treating their Black workers fairly. They're not hiring them proportionally.
Get fired.
Yeah, they're not hiring and retaining and compensating their workers proportionally to the population of the Bay Area, which has caused a lot of Black families to have to move out of places like San Francisco, Oakland, and other places in the Bay Area. It's not it's not the same anymore, and
okay,
it's unfortunate.
Come on, we got to rush you along. April Catsy Lemon wants you to give some more facts about Bitcoin, chain currency, and the whole nine. So why don't you take about 10 minutes and let's just kind of summarize what we've learned and what else we need to learn today.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I think there's a lot of things to kind of talk about. And one of the things that I did, like I said, was I spent 2 years doing my own research before I entered into a position into cryptocurrencies. I needed to have that sort of sound knowledge base in order for me to make the decision to say, hey, I'm going to put my money into this. And once again, what I'm saying is not financial advice. Please do your own research.
That's right.
But I wrote this book to be a bridge to people who don't have information on this subject, to kind of get a nice place of understanding and get a nice set of information that they can go to make their own decisions moving forward. The other thing about that is don't invest, like anything, don't invest more that you're willing to lose.
That's
because here's the thing, right? What people aren't aware of right now are the risks in cryptocurrencies, right? There's a risk when you go and hop in your car and don't put on your seatbelt, right? There's a risk there. People, if you don't know any better and you don't know the risk, you're just going to hop in the car and start and drive off, right? You got to know what the risks are in what you're doing and interacting with these technologies. And right there, that knowledge gap is where people are able to come in and exploit the people who don't have knowledge, right? So that's where it becomes a psychology thing, where people can essentially engage in a con on somebody, and it becomes a confidence scheme. So there's that. You have to trust yourself, because that's ultimately why this technology was created, was so that you can have the power. And it goes back to knowledge being the power, right? You have to know the risks associated. How are you securing your network? How are you securing your Bitcoin? How are you custodying your Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies? There's another strong maxim in this this industry where it goes by no keys, no coins. So if you don't have custody of your cryptocurrency, someone else does. There's, in my book, like I said, there's a lot of really great rules that I kind of put forward. The largest one being, caveat emptor, buyer beware, right? So that's the one thing. But there's so much information that it's overwhelming. Like, I do research on a daily basis on this stuff. And you got to know when to kind of take a step back and say, hey, look, because I'm very passionate about it. I can do it 7 days a week, but even still, after a few months, I just need to, hey, I'm taking the week off. I need to give myself a week off to kind of unwind. And
you sound like your own broker.
Yeah. Well, so at one time I was an over-the-counter trader. So I would trade with people really around the world. I mean, I traded last year with some people in Uganda, and that was great for me to do. I mean, I didn't make any money off the trade, but just to say, hey, I entered into a trade first time with someone in Uganda, to me really felt great. And really teach them the process of how Bitcoin works. And so now I think they're off to the races, and they're probably doing better than me in Bitcoin right now. There's so much opportunity right now in Africa to grow.
What's on your hat?
My hat, it's Cage Chain. So I have a free weekly newsletter about what's going on in cryptocurrencies and blockchain. And so if you want to keep up to date and you want a free resource in terms of all the current happenings, you can go to the website, cagechain.com, cagechain.io, sign up for the newsletter, and I provide infographics, articles, and typically a weekly podcast that people can listen to. And it's just a good way for people that you don't have to read everything. You can read the headlines if you want to read the headlines. The people who kind of have more of a, I would say, intermediate or advanced level of knowledge, there's infographics that kind of help them. So Cage Chain started out as a consultancy. I was a blockchain consultant, and this is the only way now that I can kind of keep it going and provide information to people. And I really enjoy doing it, and I enjoy the opportunity to provide a free resource to our community, but really to everybody. It's become very popular throughout people in the industry.
So let's help you better establish yourself. Dorothy, we just didn't find him out the clear blue. I met him through our friends at the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, okay.
He actually has a day job where he helps people, including black people, get contracts.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I can't quit my day job and retire and be a crypto millionaire just yet. So
I'm sorry, did you say can't?
Well,
Did you say can't?
I'll say this: I like doing what I do. I like the ability to help people out, and so
Not yet. That's what you're trying to say. Not yet.
Well, so here's the thing: I like my job, and I like researching and helping people out with cryptocurrencies. There's something else I kind of want to talk about too. Is when it comes to, I'm also an advisor for a blockchain network called Tau. It was the first music blockchain, and it emerged with the understanding that Black artists in the music industry didn't get their fair cut of their musical contributions. Hopefully that doesn't come as any surprise to anybody.
Royalties. Big story better about Anita Baker not owning her masters.
Right. We could go on and on. So they sought out to decentralize the process of music to allow content creators and musicians to get more of a share of the revenue that comes in from music sales. And I've worked with this team for a number of years now. And really, if you look at it, right, we look at the overall economy and how we've had Black people throughout the years have their contributions monetized and not gotten the full share of that monetization process. So this blockchain has been upgraded. The Tau network has been upgraded to now it's going to foster all Black business. So not just musicians, artists, small business people, so that we can do the essentially launch pads for small businesses. So Donnie could raise money for his business and we can all crowdfund him, and we can do it through a tokenized process. Or if I wanted a small business loan, I could go to the bank and they could say no. The chances of me being a Black business person, most likely they'll say no. Or I can go to the community and say, hey, you know what? I'd like somebody to provide me with a nice short-term loan. I'll pay it back. That way we're taking credit scores out of the mix. We're taking my zip code out of the mix. And, someone looking at me and saying, I don't know about this guy, So those are the things that we're trying to build on this network. Once again, the Tau network. And it's DeFi for the arts and entertainment industry, but it's also for Black business. They're the only, or at least one of the only blockchains that I know that is openly welcoming the Black business community. And
how is this less racist than the American system already is?
Well, it's less racist, one, because the lead developer is dedicated this blockchain to Black liberation. Now, I think people might say, well, hey, this is a white guy who did it, but I don't know how many other white developers of cryptocurrencies and blockchains out there who says, hey, this network is open to creating a pathway to Black liberation.
Well, we got to give him the John Brown test. I got a new book coming out, I Am Black Wall Street, and we talk about John Brown in there. So if he got the heart of a John Brown, we're going to find it.
Well, I believe he does. And like I said, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's not doing that with his cryptocurrency.
He's no John Brown.
Okay, yeah. And so I don't want to name names and sit here and do things like that, but
he's dedicated to, first and foremost, his community that he come from. Number one.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, he's dedicated to making Mark Zuckerberg more money. And
that too.
you know, if you're a business person, that's what you're in business to do anyway.
How much damn money do you need? You got more money you're gonna spend in any of lifetimes, and the way this world is going, his grandchildren won't even be around to spend it. So, you know,
Yeah,
we got to get over it. You know, I was just watching a movie last night. It was a futuristic movie. I'm guilty, and they were looking at colonizing another planet because they had trashed this planet. We got to be careful. And so, with a minute or so, where is the moral conscience?
Yeah.
When I think of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., when I think of Malcolm, they were the moral conscience of this country. And they are reminders that Black people have a significant role, not just in this country, but in this world. When you look at Africa, no one has more vested interest and more reason than African Americans. We want to see it do better, but we are also familiar with the games that not only white people play, divide and conquer, but the games that Black people play, including classism. So where is the moral conscience in Bitcoin, chain currency, and all of this? Because I don't know those people, but I know Black people pretty well. And we tend to love God.
So that's another part of my book. If we create this new system, it has to be a moral system. That's what I believe. You know, it needs to be as free of crime as possible. If you want to engage in crime, do it on Bitcoin, do it on those other networks. But the one that we create, let's make it moral. Let's make it equitable so everybody can participate. And it allows for real stratification within our community in a cross-border fashion. That might be very lofty, but once again, you know, I didn't quit my day job because I could trade all day if I wanted to and maybe be okay. So I've dedicated myself to providing information.
We would have to rethink where we're going with this. I need you to be a little bit more confident that you certainly can quit your day job. I mean, I think presumably you're making more money than someone making minimum wage. I mean, and the goal, of course, is to cover your expenses.
But he said, hold up, he did say that he likes, with his other job, he really likes, he loves that job. And he loves helping people. And
I enjoy helping people.
Yeah, he's talented here. So he's expanding himself in different areas, and it's very difficult to disconnect when you really enjoy something that you love.
Fair enough.
But I also love helping my community understand this better. So I could have chosen not to do that, and I would say I would be a much wealthier person if I just focused on myself. And I don't know, there's very few of us, I'll say there's a lot of us who are getting into this so we can get rich, which is, we're in such a survival mentality right now. That's understandable. I'm not blaming or faulting anybody.
Right.
But what I want to do with this book is provide the information that we need so that we can get to the place mentally to say, hey, let's not just get rich individually. Let's create a sustainable economy for ourselves so we're not relying on the one that has so many barriers, obstacles, and discrimination against us.
Because, you know, when you go back in history and look at all the Black Wall Streets around this country, I mean, the dollars rotated around in the Black communities would sustain the Black community. And you had what? You had funeral businesses, you had insurance companies, right? You had your own banks in certain places, and then in some places you had your own hospitals. And, right, that's what we need right now, badly, in the community, because we can never forget about Tuskegee or Henrietta Lack, right? And you, like you said, it has to be a moral compass somewhere, right? At some point in time, when we're getting in these positions of power, knowledge, education, position, right? We have responsibility. We have to be accountable, not just for those positions, but we're taking care of people. You know, we don't want to exploit people. You know, right now we're having a high mental illness crisis within the African American construct, right? And we really do need we need a large mental illness institution, but it needs to have community oversight in there so that those folks won't be exploited.
I agree. Well, so
how scientists can be. They always with everything. That's all scientists, financial scientists as well.
Well, so what I kind of want to leave you, Donnie, and everybody with is
thank you, Kamal. Great job.
What's possible is an indestructible Black Wall Street that's global because it can't be bombed. It's online. It's decentralized.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You dropped
I got to get our people to a place, like I say, most important right now in our community. We have folks that they want to make money, but they don't want in our school system, Donnie, right? If you can teach the economy and the way that the economy runs out here in the real world to our children and growing up with that economic education and language, right? It would be easy for them to grasp onto what's going on and how to invest, how to do this, how to do that. What is they taught? Now, these kids are blind. Like, we got children coming out of high school that's 4 or 5 grades behind, and in this pandemic, which I call a boycott. I actually call it a boycott because they made big money off this pandemic, right? Like, they boycotted the whole country, right? And so, like, explaining that to our young people, educating them properly of what just happened here, right? What is going on here? Because the bottom line is it's the economic system. That's what's going on, right? And understanding that. Like they're teaching curriculums in school, right? To just create laborers in a field, right? You go work for somebody, not to create a Black Wall Street. No, you go work in the white Wall Street as the laborer in that Wall Street. There's no such thing as a Black Wall Street. And this is what the curriculum is projecting under certain curriculums, depending on what zip code. Like Donnie just shared with me, he said, Dorothy, I got something for you for grant money for private education. Right now, if I get that and put my kid over in that, right, that's a total different curriculum. That's almost like a Black boule education. She's not gonna be a laborer. She's even gonna be an entrepreneur or a gatekeeper. That's the kind of education comes with private education, right? Then it's that education in the middle, on the middle ground, right? That kids learn and stuff. It's a little bit better than your regular public school and your marginalized communities and stuff, right? It's a step up. So they definitely getting the education of they're gonna be the managers, the micromanagers and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? The overseers of the laborers.
We got to get up out of here, Dorothy. It's 11 o'clock. But hold tight. Kamal, do you have gas lines in California right now?
I believe we do.
East Coast is shut down.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we like to bring you back and talk about that old crypto. Okay, yeah. Kamal, I got your website running, KamalRhubbard.com. Dorothy, you've added the right spice that we needed this morning.
Thank you.
Kamal,
thanks for joining us,
any
Dorothy.
final thoughts?
Well, yeah. Once again, I mean, I also wrote this book in mind that this is the 100th year anniversary of the Tulsa bombing. And, you know, I hope that it's a tribute to our ancestors and those businesses that were lost. I hope it's a tribute to all the people I mentioned and haven't had a chance to mention, you know, who've lost their lives. And that drove me to want to write this book. And, you know, what is going to be our financial, you know, Breonna Taylor or George Floyd that's going to make us have that mentality that, hey, we need something for ourselves. And, you know, we're not going to tolerate how we're being treated now. And we need something better for ourselves and gonna want something better for ourselves.
Where can we pick the book? Put the information out there. I'm gonna get you a book.
Yeah, it's at my website, www.kamalrhubbard.com. You'll see just a quick icon that says get the book, and you can get it from the Lulu bookstore right off my website. It's available in ebook
This is the book,
and
DeFi
paperback.
Diaspora, down the bottom, creating the foundation to a more equitable and sustainable global economy, Black economy through decentralized finance. That's DeFi, decentralized finance. Okay, we got to get up out of here, folks. Thank you, everybody. Kamal, we'll talk to you later. We'll be back at 7 o'clock tonight.
Thanks so much, Donnie. Thanks so much, Dorothy. Thanks for having me again.
Good deal. See you tonight.